Welcome to the orientation for volunteers with the City of Independence Emergency Preparedness Division, including members of the Medical Reserve Corps of Greater Kansas City. The Medical Reserve Corps of Greater Kansas City is housed within the Volunteer Corps of the Emergency Preparedness Division of the City of Independence. The city provides support, legal, and insurance protections for volunteers regardless of where they live and regardless of the place of deployment. Volunteers with the Medical Reserve Corps are automatically members of the Emergency Preparedness Volunteer Corps and are subject to its policies and its procedures. The Medical Reserve Corps of Greater Kansas City is made up of volunteers from 9 counties in Kansas and Missouri, which encompass the Kansas City metro region. The Medical Reserve Corps of Greater Kansas City also serves this 9-county region. The purpose of this orientation is to help volunteers take full advantage of resources available and to know what to do to meet requirements, to learn how to respond when they are activated, to understand the insurance coverage, and also, and really importantly, to ensure the most rewarding, enjoyable, and professionally supported volunteer experience possible. This orientation is required for all volunteers, and this video will last about 30 minutes, and it is broken into 5 key orientation topics. Let's begin with our first topic, organizations and activities. We'll identify where volunteers fit into the existing emergency preparedness organizations and describe the various types of activities that are available to volunteers. The Emergency Preparedness Division is part of the City of Independence Fire Department. The division is staffed by 2 full-time personnel and 1 half-time administrative assistant. The Emergency Preparedness Division is responsible for emergency and disaster prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery, and is supported by a corps of trained volunteers. So when you see our emergency preparedness organization chart, what we're illustrating for you is the reporting structure of the Emergency Preparedness Division. As we mentioned earlier, the Emergency Preparedness Division Manager reports to the Fire Chief and is supported by the Emergency Planner and half-time administrative assistant. The Emergency Preparedness Volunteer Corps is overseen by the Emergency Preparedness Division Manager. There are many opportunities for volunteers to assist the Emergency Preparedness Division, and we are very grateful that you have stepped forward to be a volunteer with us. The volunteer activities are broken into sections. So to keep it simple, when we're talking about these sections, here's what we say. Operations does stuff, planning plans stuff, logistics gets stuff, membership supports the volunteers and the community, and the command staff directs its volunteer responders. So let's go into a little bit more detail on the activities that volunteers participate in within each of these categories. And we're going to start with the operations section, or the doing stuff. Operations volunteers might be involved in caring for animals after a disaster as part of the disaster animal response team. They might be responsible for clearing storm debris as part of debris response. That could include chainsaws for trees that are downed. We might provide traffic and crowd control as part of event safety, providing triage, treatment, and transport of victims in a disaster if a member of the Medical Reserve Corps. Or a volunteer might participate in search and rescue efforts for lost people and evidence as part of the search and rescue team. Now that we've covered a few examples of how volunteers do stuff, let's move into how volunteers plan stuff. Examples of planning opportunities might include writing plans and writing out procedures for emergencies and disaster response and disaster recovery. It might include maintaining records of deployment activities and keeping documents. Another activity is tracking activated and deployed personnel by resource tracking. Could be collecting information relevant to the field operations as part of situational awareness. An example of situational awareness might include observing and reporting on-ground weather information by our Storm Spotters unit, or situational awareness activity might be assessing the data. So in addition to doing and planning, volunteers also support the getting of stuff, which is logistics. So some examples of getting stuff or logistics might be providing radio communications and equipment as part of the communications team. It could be ham radio services as part of the emergency communication services. Volunteers might maintain buildings and locations that are used by volunteers to keep volunteers supplied with food and beverages as part of their facilities unit. Logistics also could include keeping an inventory and tracking equipment and supplies as part of equipment. And finally, another example of logistics or getting stuff is managing response vehicles as part of transportation. The Volunteer Membership Task Force is responsible for providing disaster preparedness information to the community as part of community education. The Membership Task Force recruits new volunteers, orient new volunteers, track volunteer performances as part of member support, as well as distributing information to volunteers and, of course, to the public as part of marketing and media. Within the Emergency Preparedness Volunteer Program, there are volunteers who serve in leadership roles, and these leadership roles are known as command staff. These leadership volunteers are responsible for directing the team of volunteers in order to support this entire division of emergency preparedness. Some examples of directing are monitoring the threats to the City of Independence, especially weather, and monitoring those around the clock. Other examples are staffing and operating the Emergency Operations Center. Other examples of directing the volunteers would include communicating with city departments, with state agencies, and other community partners and organizations. They would issue alerts to citizens, to city staff, to volunteers, and also are responsible for activating and deploying volunteers to particular assignments. Here you can see how volunteers in the operations, the planning, logistics, membership, and command staff support the Emergency Preparedness Division by reporting up through the volunteer coordinator. Let's move to our next volunteer orientation topic, membership and training requirements. You might be eager to get started volunteering, and we are absolutely eager to have you join our program. But before you can start, there are a few initial requirements. Safety is always of the utmost importance for our volunteers, as well as the communities that we serve. For this reason, before volunteers can begin working, there are some things that are required from you. You must have an accepted application and a background check, have a clear criminal record and maintain a clear criminal record, have a current signed volunteer service agreement, and if you're volunteering with a medical license, say as an EMT, a registered nurse, a doctor, especially with the Medical Reserve Corps volunteers, you must be registered with K-Serve. If you are a Kansas resident, that's K-SERV, K-Serve, if you live in Kansas, or Show Me Response if you're a Missouri resident. And you must adhere to all performance expectations in the volunteer service agreement. As well as that, members are expected to attend at least 4 meetings or training sessions each year. You'll need to complete 8 hours of service every year, either during scheduled events or through incident deployments. You will need to complete this volunteer orientation module, and that would need to be done before your first deployment. You need to complete some training expectations according to your desired area of service. So these are determined by each unit and are available from the unit leaders. So for instance, if you wanted to be a volunteer within search and rescue team, or if you wanted to be a volunteer with storm spotters or the animal disaster animal rescue team, then there would be some other expectations or trainings that would be required for you to work on those different teams. And the unit leaders would let you know what those are. In addition to membership requirements, there are a series of training requirements. Each of the training requirements builds to develop more in-depth understanding of emergency preparedness. Much of this training can be completed online, and these training requirements help to maintain a high standard of performance of volunteers across the country. So within 30 days of joining, you must complete 2 online trainings. There's FEMA ICS-100, and that provides an introduction to the Incident Command System. And the Incident Command System is the structure within which emergency preparedness organizations operate. And the other course you would have to take is FEMA ICS-700, and that provides an introduction to the National Incident Management System. Both of these courses can be found online, and at the end of this orientation, you will be provided links that will direct you to taking these courses that are required. Also, there is 2 other courses, ICS 200, which is Basic Incident Command System for Initial Response, and that course builds on the ICS 100. The other course is the ICS 800, which is an introduction to the National Response Framework, and that course builds on the ICS 700. These 2 courses, ICS 200 and ICS 800, must be completed within a year of beginning your volunteer service. The Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT, is a basic training course that provides an overview of personal emergency preparedness and organized disaster response, and this course must be completed within 2 years of joining. Additional training opportunities are offered on a regular basis. Most monthly meetings offer some training. Bi-monthly sessions focus on a variety of topics. Some training topics extend over multiple sessions. Quarterly or special occasion sessions on multiple topics are also offered. FEMA independent study courses are available online at any time. We encourage everyone to take advantage of this online resource that provides training in a wide variety of subject areas. The link to the FEMA courses is provided on this slide. Before you can get started with the online FEMA courses, you will need to create a FEMA Student ID number, also known as a SID, S-I-D. You can register for your FEMA SID at the link provided. Once you have your FEMA Student ID number, you can begin taking courses. In order to receive credit for a course, you must score 75% or higher. If you fail the exam, don't worry, you can retake it immediately and as often as needed. If you pass the exam, you will receive a message that your exam has been submitted. Within minutes or up to a week later, you will receive an email with a link to your certificate. Forward the certificate to the Planning Section Chief or the Assistant Volunteer Coordinator for inclusion in your records. For those volunteers looking to further expand their skill sets, free, specialized, and advanced level training courses in many areas of emergency response are also offered. The Mid-America Regional Council, or MARC, offers courses in the Kansas City metro area. These courses are typically offered weekdays during business hours, and some are available online. On the slide, there is a link to the MARC training opportunities. The Missouri State Emergency Management Agency, known as SEMA, offers courses in various locations statewide, as well as online. These courses are typically offered during business hours, and lodging is covered if the course is conducted more than 70 miles from a volunteer's home. You can go to the link to view SEMA training opportunities. And then there are even more advanced training opportunities that are available in order for you to have continued professional growth and development. Additional training courses are offered online through Medical Reserve Corps Train, and this link is also available on the slide. FEMA's Emergency Management Institute offers additional advanced training opportunities in a wide variety of topics. FEMA has a national resident training facility that offers these advanced courses and certification programs. These courses are free and transportation is reimbursed. Meal tickets must be purchased, and you must apply and be accepted to these courses. The link is provided to view the FEMA Emergency Management Institute courses that are provided. The fifth topic for volunteer orientation is volunteer service. Activation and deployment are terms which need to be defined. Activation is the process by which volunteers are notified that they are needed. An activation notice may be received by text, email, phone, or ham radio. We do not activate volunteers through social media. An activation notice may be for immediate deployment or to stand by for further developments and information. Deployment is the stage at which volunteers are instructed to report to a specific location for duty. If you get an activation notice, there are 3 potential options: stand by, report availability, or deploy. If you're told to stand by, do that. Monitor the situation for further developments, determine if you are ready and able to deploy, notify family and friends, and make sure your personal response gear is ready. If told to report your availability, respond as directed. Usually you only need to respond if you are available. And if you're told to deploy, do steps 1 and 2, and then report as directed. If you are not able to deploy, notify the Emergency Operations Center or other leadership as directed. When you have been deployed, please remember to follow these steps. First, remain calm. Deployment in an emergency can bring an adrenaline rush. If that happens, stop, take a deep breath, and calm yourself. Ensure that you have appropriate personal protective equipment and other gear necessary for the tasks expected of you. You want to drive safely. Upon arrival, sign in a report to your assigned supervisor. This is critical for liability and insurance purposes and to ensure accountability. Remember your training. Do not exceed the limits of what you are trained to do. If you are assigned a task that you are unable, unwilling, or untrained to do, immediately tell your supervisor. Indicate what task you might be better able to fulfill. Don't feel pressured to do something you do not feel you are able to do. Your team needs to know your limits in order to undertake a task responsibly. While you're deployed, remember to work cooperatively with all members of your team. Communicate clearly and as often as needed. Speak up, especially if you see a safety risk. Follow the directions of your supervisors and professional responders. Self-monitor your own health and safety, including your mental health. Make adjustments as necessary. If you need a break, say so. Monitor the safety of those around you and address dangers immediately. Stay within the limits of your training. This is for your liability protection. After deployment, continue to monitor your own health. If you are excessively tired, don't drive. Ask for help. If you are disturbed by things that you have experienced, contact your supervisor or their supervisor so that mental health assistance can be provided for you. If there is a short debriefing about the deployment, also known as a hot wash, participate in it. There are important lessons that can often be forgotten if they are not acknowledged. And finally, sign out. This is just as important as signing in for liability and insurance purposes. Our next topic for volunteer orientation is protections. There are a variety of liability protection laws which protect volunteers from civil liability when responding to disasters and emergencies. The state Good Samaritan laws, the Federal Volunteer Protection Act of 1997, and the State Volunteer Protection Law. Let's take a look at each one in a little more detail. In both Missouri and Kansas, Good Samaritan laws protect licensed medical personnel from civil liability when offering uncompensated medical assistance in emergency situations with certain restrictions. This extends to those who have completed a recognized first aid course and requires that the individual act within the limits of their training. Links to these laws for both Kansas and Missouri are provided here on the slide. These laws protect appropriately trained and licensed individuals when acting on their own outside of their volunteer roles. And then there are volunteer protection laws. With certain restrictions, individuals are protected from civil liability for actions they perform as volunteers with nonprofit or governmental entities through federal law and state laws in both Kansas and Missouri. Links to the Federal Volunteer Protection Act and laws for both Kansas and Missouri are provided here on the screen. To receive full liability protection as a volunteer with the Emergency Preparedness Division of the City of Independence, volunteers must sign in and out at the scene of a deployment. They must act within the scope of their training and assigned responsibilities. You need to maintain licensing or certifications required for your position or your responsibilities. You do not accept any form of compensation, and always allow first responders to take control when they are present. As a volunteer, you are covered by liability and insurance protection. Independence Emergency Preparedness Division volunteers are protected in the following ways. Workers' compensation. It's the same as an employee of the city. Accident insurance provides primary insurance coverage for accidents occurring while working in a volunteer capacity, and volunteers are protected against liability claims. In all cases, coverage is dependent on the volunteer acting within the scope of their training, being signed in for duty, and performing as directed by the supervisory personnel. The last orientation topic is about keeping informed and connected as a volunteer. There are several ways to be informed and to stay connected, and it is the volunteer's responsibility to utilize these tools to stay in touch with the Emergency Preparedness Division. The first tool is the Informational Calendar. This calendar is available to keep volunteers aware of meetings, events, and scheduled deployments. The calendar can be accessed at the link on the screen, and this calendar is for informational purposes only, not for scheduling assignments. This calendar can also be linked to your personal calendar for easy access. The second tool for staying in touch is called Volgistics, Volunteer Logistics Program. Volgistics is an online volunteer logistics program, and it is used to maintain volunteer and training records, track service hours, and to schedule volunteers for predetermined service commitments. The following slides will guide you through the use of Volgistics, or what we call VicNet. VicNet is the user interface for our volunteer records and scheduling system. We also call it Volgistics. So you will hear the system referred to as both VicNet or Volgistics interchangeably. Don't let these names confuse you. There are video tutorials on using VicNet that are provided at the end of this section. Just remember, Volgistics equals VicNet. This slide illustrates the important first steps to logging into Volgistics or VicNet. After accessing the web link on this slide, enter your login name. Your login name was emailed to you when you applied to volunteer. Next, enter your password. This password was also created when you first applied. Then click on Go. Please note that clicking Exit in VicNet will log you out of the entire system. Now you're looking at an overview of the VicNet homepage. If you click on My Profile to complete and update it with your contact information, demographics, assignment preferences, emergency contact information, and you can add a photo. Under the VicNet My Profile, it's critical to verify the accuracy of your contact information and to always keep this up to date. Verify the accuracy of the demographic information. A driver's license number is required for anyone to drive a city vehicle. Please remember that when you make changes and input information to save the changes. Under the My Profile Skills and Experience section, this is where you can let us know in what areas you excel and how you would like to serve. Remember to save the changes. Under Assignment Preferences, there is a list which includes all active or pending events and operations. Select assignments that you're interested in knowing about. You'll receive information specific to your choices from time to time. Only those items you check will appear in the calendar in My Schedule, and you will only be able to sign up for those items. Please remember to save your changes. The emergency contact information on the VicNet My Profile must be verified for accuracy and be kept up to date. Please remember to check that from time to time, and as always, save your changes. You can upload a headshot photo into your profile. Please take the photo against a solid white or very light colored background. This photo may be used for your regional identification badge, so please keep it professional. You can save your changes and then click Exit. By clicking on Account in VicNet, you can change your password and message preferences. Keep in mind that most announcements to volunteers come through this system. If you opt out of receiving messages, you will not receive potentially critical information. In the Message Preference section, please note that most activation and deployment notifications are sent as text messages. If you choose none or email as your choice for deployment notifications, these messages will be delayed or not sent, and your opportunities for service will be affected. Be sure to save your changes. You can utilize the VicNet My Schedule to sign up for assignments. Click on any day with an orange Help Wanted flag. Read the details to see if the assignment is a fit for you, depending on your availability and your skills. Some assignments require medical licensing, so please remember to check the details. The tutorials slide provides links to 2 video tutorials that will help guide you through the basic operation of VicNet. The first link is how to use the program for volunteers with a calendar view, and the second link is how to sign in and how to sign out at VicTouch. Well, congratulations, you have completed your orientation to be a volunteer with the City of Independence Emergency Preparedness. For the final confirmation, please visit the link on the screen and complete a short PDF document. Add your name, date, signature, and then email it. We look forward to working with you, and we thank you very much for giving of your time and your talents